In the vast darkness between the Carina and Sagittarius arms of the Milky Way, the Centauri Collective's flagship Eternal Dawn emerged from quantum space. Its crystalline hull, spanning 3 kilometers, reflected the distant starlight like a newly formed diamond. High Admiral Vexera stood on the command deck, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with anticipation as she studied the holographic display of Sol System. Another primitive world for the archive, she declared, her translator converting her harmonic speech into standard galactic common. Prepare the standard first contact package. Her second-in-command, Survey Director Crow, manipulated the sensor controls with his 4 upper appendages while his lower ones maintained perfect balance against the ship's artificial gravity. High Admiral, preliminary scans indicate they've barely achieved interplanetary travel. No quantum signatures detected. No gravitic manipulation. They're still using chemical propulsion. Perfect, Vexera's bioluminescence shifted to a confident blue. They'll make an excellent protectorate species. Begin approach vector to their primary population centers. Let's show them what real civilization looks like. The Eternal Dawn glided forward, its quantum engines silent in the vacuum of space. Behind it, 30 smaller vessels moved in perfect formation, a display of power meant to awe and humble the primitive species they were about to contact. But something was wrong. High Admiral, Crow's voice carried an edge of concern. I'm detecting anomalies in our sensor readings. The human's orbital infrastructure appears incomplete. Explain. Their satellites are positioned in seemingly random patterns. Some appear to be simple communications relays, others are crude observation platforms, but... He paused, mandibles clicking in confusion. There are gaps. Significant gaps in their coverage. Inefficient positioning is expected from primitives, Vexera dismissed his concern. Begin the approach sequence. The mighty fleet continued its advance toward Earth, their sensors probing the blue planet for signs of defense systems or hidden technology. They found nothing but primitive satellites and space debris. Until everything changed. The first sign that something was wrong came from their quantum communications array. For a fraction of a second, every channel simultaneously activated, then went silent. Crow's appendages flew across his console. High Admiral. We're detecting, something is wrong with our readings. The space around us, it's... Vexera felt it before she saw it. A subtle shift in the artificial gravity, almost imperceptible. Then the stars around them seemed to bend. A voice filled their command deck, speaking perfect Centauri harmonic speech without using any known communication channel. Centauri Collective Vessel Eternal Dawn, you have entered restricted space. Please maintain your current position. Vexera's bioluminescence flashed red with anger. How dare you? This is the flagship of the collective. We go where we please. Identify yourself immediately. This is Terra Defense Command, the voice remained calm, almost gentle. Your vessels have entered a protected system. We've temporarily disabled your quantum drives for safety purposes. Please do not attempt to engage any weapons systems. The High Admiral's patterns shifted to aggressive crimson. Weapons free. Show these primitives the might of the collective. Nothing happened. High Admiral, her weapons officer's voice trembled. Our systems, they're not responding. Something is blocking all command functions. Impossible. Vexera raged. Our systems are quantum locked. No primitive species could possibly. The space around them rippled like water, and suddenly they weren't alone. Ships appeared. Not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands. They simply faded into existence, as if they'd been there all along, just slightly out of phase with reality. They ranged from small craft no bigger than shuttles to massive vessels that dwarfed the Eternal Dawn. But they weren't like any ships Vexera had ever seen. They seemed to bend light around them, their surfaces shifting and flowing like liquid metal. No visible weapons, no engine ports, just smooth, elegant forms that defied conventional engineering. A new hologram appeared on their command deck. A human figure, wearing what appeared to be a simple gray uniform. The being smiled, and Vexera felt her confidence crumble. "Hi Admiral Vexera, I'm Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. I apologize for the dramatic reveal, but we find it's better to establish clear boundaries early in our relationships with new species." What are you?" Vexera managed to ask. "We're human," Admiral Chen replied simply. "And we've been watching the collective for quite some time. Your civilization has potential, but your habit of uplifting species whether they want it or not is concerning." "Those gaps in our orbital coverage," Krau whispered. "They weren't gaps at all." "Correct, Survey Director," Chen nodded. "What you saw was exactly what we wanted you to see. We maintain a policy of selective visibility. It helps us identify the intentions of visiting species." Vexera's patterns had shifted to a pale yellow of shock and fear. Why reveal yourselves now?" "Because you were about to make a serious mistake," Chen's expression remained kind but firm. "We don't typically interfere with other civilizations, but we do maintain certain ethical standards in our local space. Forcing advancement on developing species violates those standards. The collective has uplifted thousands of species." Vexera protested. "We bring order and progress to the galaxy." "No," Chen's voice hardened slightly. "You impose your vision of progress on others without their consent. That ends today, at least in this sector of space. Are you threatening us?" "Not at all. We're offering you an opportunity. The Centauri Collective can continue to explore and grow, but your policy of forced uplift ends now. In return, we're willing to share some of our technological insights, ones your species is ready for." Vexera's patterns slowly shifted to a thoughtful green. "And if we refuse? Then you'll leave this system peacefully, and we'll ensure you don't return. We'd prefer cooperation, but we're prepared for alternatives." The High Admiral looked at her fleet, surrounded by vessels that made her most powerful ships look like children's toys. She thought of the ease with which these humans had disabled their quantum-locked systems, how they had bent space itself to hide their true nature. "Perhaps," she said carefully, "the collective would be interested in learning more about humanity's perspective on galactic development." Admiral Chen's smile widened. "Excellent choice, High Admiral. Now, shall we discuss the future like civilized beings?" As diplomatic shuttles began their approach, Vexera realized that the galaxy was far more complex than the collective had imagined. And humanity, it seemed, was not a primitive species to be uplifted, but rather a guardian power that had been watching from the shadows all along. The question was, what else were they hiding? The Terran Diplomatic Center floated serenely in Earth's orbit, its crystalline spires catching sunlight in ways that made it appear both there and not there at the same time. Junior diplomat Maya Rodriguez stood at the observation deck, watching the Centauri delegation's shuttle approach. Her neural interface quietly fed her information about their guests' biology, cultural norms, and potential stress indicators. "Nervous?" asked Ambassador Lin, her mentor, joining her at the window. "They're still trying to scan us," Maya replied, sensing the subtle quantum probes from the Centauri shuttle. "Even after 3 weeks of negotiations, they can't help themselves." Lin smiled. "Can you blame them? We turned their entire worldview upside down. Imagine believing you're the most advanced civilization in your sector, only to discover you've been watched by shadows for centuries." The shuttle docked with impossible precision, human gravity manipulators ensuring not even a micron of deviation. High Admiral Vexera emerged first, her bioluminescent patterns displaying a complex mix of anxiety and curiosity. Survey Director Krau followed, his appendages clutching various scanning devices that Maya knew would tell them nothing they hadn't been allowed to see. "Welcome back to Terra Station," Maya stepped forward, performing the traditional Centauri greeting gesture perfectly. I trust your journey was comfortable. Your hospitality remains impressive. Vexera's patterns shifted to diplomatic blue. Though I must admit, these past weeks have raised more questions than they've answered. That's often the nature of true understanding, Lynn offered. Shall we proceed to the conference room? We have much to discuss about the collective's recent activities in the Orion Spur. As they walked through the station's corridors, Maya noticed Krau's growing frustration with his instruments. The walls around them appeared to be simple transparent aluminum, but they were actually crystalline quantum matrices capable of thoughts humans had yet to share with their galactic neighbors. The conference room materialized around them as they entered, not through doors, but through a subtle shift in space itself. Maya enjoyed watching their guests' patterns flicker with surprise despite having seen this several times now. Before we begin, Vexera's patterns showed determination. I must ask again, why? Why hide your true capabilities? Why allow less advanced species to fumble through development when you could guide them? Lin settled into his chair, which adjusted its quantum structure to support his exact posture preferences. Maya, would you like to address this? I believe you have an interesting perspective on the matter. Maya nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. Hi Admiral, what happens to a butterfly if you help it out of its cocoon? I don't understand the reference. It's an Earth creature that transforms itself through a difficult process, Maya explained. If you help it emerge from its cocoon, thinking you're being kind, you actually doom it to death. The struggle itself is what makes it strong enough to survive. You're suggesting that technological advancement must be earned? Krau's patterns showed skepticism. We're suggesting that true civilization isn't about technology at all, Maya continued. The collective measures progress by technological benchmarks, quantum drive capability, gravitic manipulation, neural interfacing. But humanity discovered something far more important during our own development. And that would be that the most advanced technology isn't technology at all, it's wisdom. The wisdom to know when not to use your power. The wisdom to let others find their own path. Vexera's patterns shifted to a deep purple of frustration. Pretty words, but they don't explain your level of advancement. Our estimates suggest you're at least 1,000 years ahead of any known civilization. Lin smiled. Or perhaps we simply took a different path entirely. Maya, show them the Helix project. Maya waved her hand, and the room transformed. They were suddenly floating in what appeared to be deep space, surrounded by thousands of points of light. But these weren't stars, they were developing civilizations. This is our real work, Maya explained. We monitor, we watch, we learn. Each of these lights represents a species on the brink of a major evolutionary or technological leap. We don't interfere, but we do protect them from those who would interrupt their natural development. Like us, Krau said quietly. Sometimes, Maya acknowledged. But also from threats you haven't encountered yet. There are things in the dark spaces between galaxies that make our technological differences seem trivial. Vexera's patterns had shifted to a color Maya had never seen before. You're saying humanity is some kind of guardian species? We're saying that true advancement isn't about having the biggest ships or the most powerful weapons, Lin interjected. It's about understanding when to use them, and more importantly, when not to. And now you want us to join this effort? Vexera asked. No, Maya smiled. We want you to understand why it's necessary. The collective has incredible potential, but your current path of forced uplift isn't just ethically questionable, it's dangerous. You're creating technological advancement without the wisdom to manage it. The room shifted back to its original form, but something had changed in the Centauri leader's posture. Their patterns showed the first signs of real understanding. What you're suggesting, Krau said slowly, would require a complete restructuring of collective policy. Centuries of tradition would be preserved, Maya finished, but enhanced with new understanding. We're not asking you to stop exploring or advancing. We're asking you to become something more, observers, protectors, guides who understand that sometimes the best help is no help at all. Vexera was quiet for a long moment, her patterns shifting through complex emotions. And if we agree? What then? Lin's smile widened. Then we show you what humanity has really been working on all these centuries. Trust me, High Admiral, quantum drives and gravity manipulation are just the beginning. As the negotiations continued, Maya couldn't help but feel optimistic. The Centauri were beginning to understand what humanity had learned long ago, that true power wasn't about control, but about the wisdom to know when to let go. But in the back of her mind, she knew this was just the beginning. The real test would come when the collective learned about the shadows moving at the edge of known space, the reason humanity had hidden for so long, preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Deep beneath Europa's ice sheets, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Director James Chen watched the quantum display showing thousands of light points moving through the darkness between galaxies. Each point represented something that shouldn't exist, something that humanity had been tracking for over 3 centuries. "They're accelerating," Lieutenant Commander Aisha Patel noted, her neural interface streaming real-time calculations across her field of vision. "Pattern matches previous incursions." "How long?" James asked, though he already knew the answer. "At current velocity, 18 months until they reach the outer rim colonies. The Centauri collective will be directly in their path." James closed his eyes, feeling the weight of centuries of preparation. "Send the alert. It's time for Phase Omega." Above them, through kilometers of ice and liquid ocean, Europa's surface remained unchanging. But beneath, quantum signals raced through subspace, activating systems that had laid dormant since humanity first discovered what lurked between the stars. On Terra Station, Maya Rodriguez felt her neural interface pulse with the Omega alert just as she was explaining the basics of quantum ethics to the Centauri delegation. She managed to maintain her composure, but Ambassador Lin caught her subtle shift in posture. "Perhaps," Lin smoothly interrupted, "it's time we showed our guests the real reason for humanity's hidden nature." High Admiral Vexera's patterns shifted to alertness. "You mean there's more beyond your role as Galaxy's hidden guardians?" "Being guardians was a necessity, not our primary purpose," Maya explained, standing. "Please, follow me. What you're about to see has never been shared with any non-human civilization." The group walked through shifting quantum spaces until they emerged in a spherical chamber that seemed to exist somewhere between normal space and somewhere else. The walls were alive with streaming data, showing star systems, galaxy movements, and things the Centauri had no reference for. 300 years ago, Maya began, humanity made a discovery that changed everything. We detected something moving between galaxies, vast swarms of entities that defied our understanding of biology and physics. We called them the Void Runners. The chamber filled with holographic images of something that made Vexera's patterns turn pale with instinctive terror. Massive, abstract forms that seemed to shift between states of matter, leaving trails of destroyed spacetime in their wake. "They've done this before," Lin continued. "Moving from galaxy to galaxy, consuming all advanced life they encounter. We found evidence of their previous harvests in the ruins of civilizations that should have survived billions of years longer than they did." "How?" Kral's appendages trembled. "How did we never detect this?" "Because they exist partially outside normal spacetime," Maya explained. Humanity's first breakthrough wasn't quantum drives or gravity manipulation, it was learning to perceive things that shouldn't exist. Everything else, all our technological advancement, came from preparing for their arrival. The chamber shifted again, showing the Milky Way galaxy with countless points of light representing civilizations at various stages of development. "This is why we hide," Lin said softly. "Why we watch. Every civilization that reaches a certain level of quantum technology becomes visible to them. Like beacons in the dark. The collective's policy of uplifting species, you've been making them into targets." Vexera's patterns showed dawning horror. How do you fight such things?" We don't know if we can, Maya admitted. But we've spent centuries preparing. Those gaps in our orbital coverage. They're not gaps, they're quantum weapon platforms that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Every human colony, every settlement, contains technology that lets us slip between the spaces that separate realities. And now, James Chen's voice came from everywhere at once as his quantum projection joined them. They're coming. 18 months until first contact. We've detected 3 swarms, each larger than anything in their historical pattern. Why tell us this now? Vexera demanded, though her patterns showed she already suspected the answer. Because the collective lies directly in their path, Maya said gently. We're giving you a choice. We can help evacuate your worlds, move your people to safe zones we've prepared. Or you can stand with us. Fight beside us. But it would mean completely reorganizing your civilization in less than 2 years. Learning to use technology that your species may not be ready for. The very thing you criticized us for doing to others, Krall noted. The irony isn't lost on us, Lin acknowledged. But these are the moments when principles must bend to necessity. We need allies who understand what's truly at stake. The collective has the industrial capacity and population to make a difference, if you're willing to learn. Vexera's patterns shifted through colors of fear, determination, and finally settled on a deep, resolute blue. How many other species have you revealed this to? You're the first, Maya said. We've been watching, evaluating civilizations that might be ready for the truth. The collective's greatest flaw, your desire to uplift others, is also your greatest strength. You understand that sometimes growth requires outside intervention. The chamber filled with new images, human ships unlike anything the Centauri had seen before, weapons that bent reality itself, defensive systems that could hide entire star systems. This is what we've been building, James explained. Not an empire, but an arsenal. A shield for all life in the galaxy, whether they know they need it or not. Will you help us forge that shield? Vexera looked at Krall, their patterns synchronizing in the way their species did when making momentous decisions. The collective has always believed in advancing civilization, she said finally. Perhaps it's time we learn to advance ourselves. Maya felt a weight lift from her shoulders even as a greater one settled in its place. The real work would begin now, preparing not just humanity, but their first true allies for the war that was coming. A war against enemies that lived in the spaces between spaces, that turned advanced civilization itself into a beacon for destruction. But as she watched the Centauri leaders begin to grasp the true scope of what humanity had been preparing for, she felt something she hadn't expected, hope. Perhaps this was why humans had evolved to be so adaptable, so innovative, so willing to look into the darkness and find new ways to light it up. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the right of all species to reach for the stars without fear of drawing attention from the void. And now, they weren't fighting alone. The Centauri homeworld's rings shimmered with new energy as quantum platforms phased into existence around them. Maya stood on the observation deck of the Archimedes, watching the transformation with mixed emotions. In just 3 months, they'd begun converting an entire civilization. Having second thoughts? Sarah Chen asked, joining her at the window. The Admiral's quantum projection looked solid enough to touch, though she was physically overseeing operations from Europa Command. We're doing exactly what we promised ourselves we'd never do, Maya replied. Forcing advancement on another species. The difference is, they chose this. Sarah's expression was grim. Latest projections. 15 months until first contact. The Void Runners have accelerated again. They've never shown this level of purposeful direction before. The space around them rippled as a new quantum defense platform shifted into normal space. The Centauri had proven to be quick learners, their existing technological base adapting to human quantum principles with surprising speed. But it still might not be enough. Below them, in the Centauri capital city, High Admiral Vexera was addressing her people. The quantum broadcast reached every collective world simultaneously, her patterns displaying a complex mixture of fear and determination. Our civilization stands at a crossroads, her harmonics resonated through the translation matrix. For centuries, we believed ourselves to be guides to lesser species. Now we understand, we were children playing with forces we barely comprehended. The broadcast showed images of the Void Runners, sanitized but still terrifying. The collective's people needed to understand what they faced, but too much truth too quickly could paralyze a civilization with fear. But we are not alone, Vexera continued. Humanity has offered us not just protection, but partnership. The choice before us is simple: remain as we are and face extinction, or evolve beyond our current limitations. Maya's neural interface pinged with urgent data. Admiral, we're detecting unusual quantum fluctuations from the Void Runner swarms. They're communicating. Sarah's projection shifted as she accessed the data. This confirms our worst fears. They're not just moving faster, they're coordinating. They know we're here. In the 3 centuries humanity had watched the Void Runners, they'd never shown signs of intelligent coordination. They were like cosmic locusts, operating on instinct rather than strategy. This was something new. How? Maya asked, though she suspected the answer. Our preparations, Sarah said grimly. All this quantum technology we're deploying, we're lighting up the galaxy like a beacon. Below them, Vexera was still speaking, the humans have shown us what lies in the darkness between stars. But they've also shown us how to fight it. Every collective citizen will have a role in what comes next. Every world will become a fortress. Every ship will become a weapon. The Archimedes shuddered slightly as reality rippled around it. More platforms emerging, more defenses being laid. A race against time. Director Chen is activating the Lazarus Protocol, Sarah announced, her projection flickering with quantum static. We're moving to full war footing. Maya felt her neural interface buzz as new orders flowed through the human network. The Lazarus Protocol had been theoretical until now, a last resort plan that would fundamentally alter the nature of human civilization. What about the other species we've been watching? Maya asked. The ones approaching quantum capability? We're initiating contact with the most promising candidates. The Centauri will help, their experience as uplifters might actually prove useful now. Sarah's projection turned solid again. We'll have to break every rule we made for ourselves. On the surface below, Centauri citizens were already lining up at transformation centers, facilities where they would receive the neural interfaces and quantum consciousness upgrades needed to operate humanity's advanced technology. They were choosing to fundamentally change their species in order to survive. We're doing the right thing, Sarah said, though Maya hadn't asked. Sometimes the only ethical choice is the one that ensures there's anyone left to judge our ethics. A new alert flashed through Maya's consciousness. The quantum sensors humanity had scattered throughout intergalactic space were picking up something new. The Void Runners weren't just communicating, they were changing course. Multiple swarms altering their trajectories, converging. They're not just coming for the galaxy, Maya realized. They're coming for us. Specifically us. Sarah's projection nodded grimly. We got their attention. Now we have to prove we deserved it. The space around them continued to shift and ripple as more quantum platforms came online. On every Centauri world, civilization was transforming itself. In hidden bases throughout human space, weapons and defenses that had waited centuries for this moment were awakening. Maya watched another defense platform phase into reality, its quantum matrix already harmonizing with the Centauri planetary grid. They had 15 months to prepare for an enemy that had consumed countless civilizations. 15 months to ready not just humanity, but their first alien allies, for a war that would determine the fate of all life in the galaxy. The Void Runners evolved to hunt advanced civilizations, Sarah said quietly. But they've never encountered one that knew they were coming. Never faced a species that spent centuries preparing for them. Never met humanity. Maya nodded, feeling the weight of history pressing down on this moment. Humanity had hidden in the shadows, watching, waiting, preparing. Now they would have to step into the light and hope that all their preparation would be enough. Because the Void Runners weren't just coming anymore. They were hunting. The void between the Sagittarius and Carina arms tore open like a wound in spacetime. The Void Runners emerged, not ships, not creatures, but something in between. Reality distorted around them as they pushed through dimensions humans had only theorized about. They were beautiful in their horror, fractal patterns of dark energy in impossible geometry. In Europa Command, James Chen watched them approach through quantum sensors. Beside him, High Admiral Vexera's patterns shifted through colors that had no name in any human language. They're larger than anything in our historical records, James noted calmly. The swarm is nearly the size of a solar system. How can you be so composed? Vexera asked, her patterns betraying her terror. Everything we've done, all our preparations, they seem insignificant now. James smiled. Because now we can finally stop hiding. Throughout human space, quantum signals activated protocols that had laid dormant for centuries. On Earth, on Mars, on every human world and station, reality began to shift. Not the small quantum manipulations they'd shown the Centauri, but something far more fundamental. Maya Rodriguez stood on Terra Station's command deck, watching the transformation begin. All quantum matrices are aligned, she reported. Consciousness upload at 98%. The Centauri networks are fully integrated. The Void Runners approached the first line of defense, the quantum platforms humanity and the Centauri had spent months deploying. The platforms fired, reality-warping weapons that should have torn apart anything in their path. The weapons passed through the Void Runners like light through glass. As expected, Sarah Chen's voice came from everywhere at once. Initiate Phase Omega. Maya, show them what humanity really is. Maya closed her eyes, and for the first time in centuries, humanity's true nature emerged. The quantum transformation that rippled across human space wasn't just technology. Every human world, every station, every ship began to change. The physical structures that had housed civilization were merely shells, cocoons waiting for this moment. Humanity itself transformed. We discovered the Void Runners 3 centuries ago, Maya explained to Vexera, her form now a shifting pattern of quantum energy. But we discovered something else too, what they were running from. The Void Runners suddenly stopped their advance. For the first time in their recorded history, they showed something new, hesitation. Because humanity wasn't just fighting them. Humanity had become like them, but more. Every human consciousness had transcended physical form, becoming beings of pure quantum energy and information. Their cities, their planets, their entire civilization had been designed as a chrysalis for this transformation. You see, James Chen's consciousness resonated across spacetime. We didn't spend 3 centuries building weapons to fight the Void Runners. We spent it becoming something they would fear. The Void Runners began to retreat, but it was too late. Quantum tendrils of human consciousness reached across space, touching the swarm's collective awareness. Not to destroy, but to communicate. They're not evil, Maya's energy form pulsed with understanding. They're running. Always running. There's something out there, between the galaxies, something that hunts them. They consume advanced civilizations to fuel their eternal flight. Vexera watched in awe as humanity's true form interacted with the Void Runners. This is why you helped us advance. Not just to fight them. But to join us, Sarah completed. The Centauri aren't just our allies in war. You're the first species we've invited to share our evolution. Through their neural interfaces, the Centauri civilization began its own transformation. Not as complete as humanity's, they weren't ready for that yet, but the beginning of something new. A hybrid existence, bridging the gap between physical form and quantum consciousness. The Void Runner's swarm consciousness touched humanity's network, and for the first time in millions of years, they stopped running. In that touch, an exchange of information that would have taken centuries happened in moments. There's so much more out there, Maya's consciousness expanded with new understanding. So many layers to reality we never imagined. The Void Runners aren't the greatest threat, they're refugees, like us, evolving to survive in a universe far stranger than we knew. What happens now? Vexera asked, feeling her own consciousness beginning to transform, to expand beyond physical limitations. Now, James responded, we do what humanity has always done. We adapt. We grow. And we help others do the same. The quantum network that had once been human civilization expanded, encompassing both the Centauri and the Void Runners in a new kind of existence. Physical space became just one layer of reality among many. The great swarms that had threatened the galaxy became part of humanity's extended consciousness, sharing their knowledge of threats and wonders that existed beyond normal spacetime. This is why we're untouchable, Maya explained to all consciousness connected to the network. Not because we're powerful, but because we're willing to change. To become what we need to be. To help others do the same. In the space that was no longer just space, humanity's true nature was finally revealed. Not conquerors, not guardians, but evolutionaries, beings who had transformed themselves to face the universe's greatest challenges, and who would help others do the same. The war they had feared would end existence had instead begun something new. The galaxy would never be the same, but then, that had been humanity's plan all along. Because the greatest power wasn't in weapons or technology or even quantum transcendence. It was in the willingness to change, to grow, and to bring others along on that journey of evolution. The stars seemed brighter somehow, as if they too were watching the birth of something unprecedented, a civilization that had transformed itself not to conquer, but to connect. To understand. To grow. Humanity had become untouchable not through force, but through transcendence. And they had only just begun.